and welcome. I'm Elaine Canyon, sweetly writing happily ever after, one book at a time. And in this video, we're building your cover design toolbox. I know I've been promising this video for a long time, and I promise I have been working on it. Part of what happened is that I did the cover market research video, and I will link that up in the cards. And when I did that video, there were a lot of growing pains, first of all, because it was the first time I tried to do anything live, and that went okay. I tried to start that video, I think 3 times, that live stream 3 times, and it just didn't want to go. And by the time it finally did go, I was so frazzled. But I was able to still walk you through the process. And as I went through that process, both to prepare for the video and as I went through and did the video, I realized that all of these covers that I was looking at for my personal story were lacking the tone that I wanted, except for one. And when you make realizations like that, especially in design, that's a good sign for you to take a step back and reevaluate. And that is exactly what I did. So I took that proverbial step back and I started just looking at covers trying to find the right tone, trying to find the tone that I wanted for the book that I'm creating my cover for. And one of the covers that stuck out as having that tone that I also had included in my market research was Belinda Kroll's Haunting Miss Trentwood. And when I realized that that one still had the tone I wanted, not quite the same tone, but it was still there, I realized, okay, it's time to start digging in further. So I read Belinda's book again. I own it, and so it was easy to go back and read it again. It's absolutely adorable, and I highly suggest it. But then I also went through and I started reading a lot of romantasy books, specifically looking for the tone that I know exists in my own book. And I found out something kind of cool going through that and getting feedback from beta readers. And as I was going through and reading the feedback from my beta readers and all of these romantasy books, I was like, well, maybe this or maybe that, trying to narrow down what exactly it was I wanted to portray in this cover to represent what actually was happening in the book. It occurred to me that comedy is a massive part of my writing. The romance is always front and center. The fantasy is a fun side part of all of my books. I still try to create a very fantastical world with fun things that you can't do in our world. And I do set it in a gas lamp kind of era, like we're using technology of the gas lamp era as opposed to technology of the medieval era. But the one thing that really came to light in all of my research was humor. I put a lot of humor into my books to the extent that I had one beta reader for one of my stories call it a comedy. And that was when everything clicked, that I'm writing a romantasy comedy. I'm writing a romance in a fantasy world, and it's a rom-com. And that was where everything shifted as well. That was why I was so drawn to illustrated covers. It wasn't simply that I can make my own illustrated cover because I'm an illustrator, but it was also that being able to see the tone in a rom-com illustrated cover was helping me portray what I could already feel in my own books. I knew my books made me laugh. I wasn't sure if they were going to make anyone else laugh, and thankfully they did. So after having all of that information, that made it a lot easier to start moving forward in the design process. And so now I'm going to walk you through how to do that. I start everything I do with design on paper. And I do that for 2 reasons. The first reason is that using the computer can often take a lot of time, especially when you're new. It can take a lot of time to figure out how to do the things you want to do. The second reason I do it is, like I've stated before, I'm an illustrator. This is where I started. I started with pencil and paper, and it's where I'm the most comfortable. So it's a lot easier for me to start in pencil and paper and to feel like I'm getting what I want through than to jump right into the computer and the software programs and feel like I'm not quite getting what I want. I also do this because pencil and paper will help you see where shading and things like that need to probably happen better than being on a computer screen well. And for me, that's true for me. And it could be up to just your artistic taste. I know designers that don't touch pencil and paper anymore, and that's perfectly fine. But for me and my process, this is how I work. So the first thing that I did was I wanted to show you that you don't need to be able to draw in order to make this work. So I picked the layouts that I liked. So if you go back to the composition video, I talked about the different compositions that exist in design, and I highlighted 6 that I frequently see in book covers. I believe it was 6. I'll link the video, you can go find out. And then I used 4 of them that I like the most personally and created some covers that were mock-ups, and I've specifically not drawn them pretty so that I can show them to you, and you can see that you can do the same thing if you're working with a cover designer. You can create the same thing and show it to them, and that will help them in creating the design that's going to speak true to the book that you're writing. So first is I have a frame one, and I put the frame in orange just so that we can see really well which composition I'm using. And I've drawn stick figures as well. So that way it's very, very simple and very easy for you to go ahead and create the exact same thing for your cover. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. You don't need to be creating designs that are going to go into an art museum. That's not what we're doing. We're creating a mock-up so that we can see what it is we're trying to do and what we want it to ultimately look like, but in a simple form, a quick, simple, dirty form. So this is the first one. And then this is the rule of thirds. And we talked about how much I love the rule of thirds. So I've got rule of thirds here. And with the rule of thirds, I've put the couple, most important, in that center area. I've got my title up at the top. For all of these, I haven't decided where to put my author name yet. That's something I'm going to think about later because I am a new author in that I'm new to being published. And so my author name needs to be on the cover, but it most certainly is not going to be the focus of anything in here. And then I've got the golden ratio. Again, the couple is in the most important part of the golden ratio. It's over here at the center because if you remember the video, we follow the line all the way around. And then the same with the golden triangle. I've got my couple down here at that point of the golden triangle, and then I've got my title up at this point of the golden triangle. So going through and creating all of these, it gives me an idea of what the cover could look like. So I've got people on, I've got my couple specifically on ships, and then I've got them in different areas, and I've made sure in all of these titles or all of these covers that the couple is in the most important part of the focus. And so that way I know when I move on to make a better mock-up of these 4 that I'm using a composition that's going to draw my viewer in the best way possible. So these are things anybody can do. All right, it's not difficult to go through and create stick figures and write your title where you think it should go based on everything else that you know about composition. So now we move on to the next step. And that is making it a little bit easier to envision the cover. So if you are hiring a designer, you don't have to go further than this really. You could go to here and just explain from here what you want. And I don't know a single designer that's going to look at that and go, oh, that was not helpful. If you understand composition and you're able to say, this is the composition I think will work, or these are the compositions I like, and this is where I kind of want focal point to be and where I want my most important pieces to be, I don't know a single designer that's going to look at that and say that wasn't helpful. And if you're designing your own cover, you might go straight from here to the computer because this might be where you're comfortable with your drawing skills, and that's perfectly fine. You can get to this point and call it good and be done. Like I said, I am an illustrator and I'm most comfortable in pencil and paper. So I went ahead and I took these mock-ups and I improved upon them to make them a little bit better and a little easier to see, like the figures and in what positions I want them in, and playing around with that a little bit. So for the rule of thirds, I went through and changed it from stick figures to an actual sketch. But what I've done, and I can line this up and the orange will show through, is I've put my characters into this middle third part. I've still got my title in the upper third part. I've gone through and really filled in the ship so that you can tell it's a little easier to tell it's a ship. And then I've put some ropes in to do that. And I've made it a nightscape. Most of these, I think all of these, no, half of these will be nightscapes. The other two will be dayscapes. And that changes my color palette. That changes the difference. But this is deliberately a nightscape. And I've lined everything up. And then I've also played around with some font ideas. So this is going through and including that whimsical side of font, but also the playful side, because it's still script. And with a script font, I can be a little bit more playful because it's a handwriting feel. And then I've included things like the tails on the P and that sort of thing. And then I'll go through and I'll see if I can't find fonts that either match this or that I like better than what I've been playing with. A lot of these are fonts I'm pretty sure I know I already own. And so I'm pulling from memory, oh, I think this is what it does and this is what it doesn't do. But going through and doing it myself allows me to see more so what I'm envisioning. And then I can take fonts and I can play with them and I can decide, oh, but I actually really want the tail on the P or what have you. So then if I pull out the frame example that I did, you can't really tell in the orange, but I actually have the snake or the sea serpent as my frame. And so I wanted to make sure that that could be seen here. And so I've got my couple adrift in the ocean and they are framed by the sea serpent. And then I've got all of my words in that upper third and top middle third. So I'm using two here. I'm framing, but I'm also playing off of the rule of thirds. And so you can see a little bit the orange circle behind, the orange oval, I'm sorry, behind the snake. And then the snake frames the couple and we create the same, that focus on them. And then I did the same thing with font. I played around with some script, handwriting, swirls and stuff that I know I've seen on fonts I already own, and really trying to build that whimsical, fun feel into the font because I want to make sure that that tone gets through in the cover. It will get through in promotion and advertising and marketing and all of that sort of thing as well. The way I talk about this book will be in that light and with that tone, but making sure that I do what I can in the cover, because there are going to be people who just see this cover. They're not going to see all my marketing for it, and making sure that I can help them that just see the cover feel that is really important. So now I've got the golden ratio. And so if you remember for that one, I had the title up here and I had it stay on this side of the ratio. And then it came all the way down. You got to see the snake and it curled back around so that my couple was in the center of that. And so then I went through and followed it again. And you can see I've done the same thing. I've kept everything sort of on this side of the line as it comes down and around and circles back to the couple. And I've drawn the snake in, or the sea serpent in a little bit better. I'm using a snake as the basis for this because this world does also have like dragons and things like that. And I don't want the sea serpent to start looking or feeling dragony. And so making sure that it is very serpentine is important to the rest of the world. But it does also create, so in this one, I had them with swords down. I will probably shift that if I decide this is my favorite. I honestly drew them swords down not thinking about it because I was in the mode of just getting things done and I really wanted them to be holding hands and that was what I was focused on. But as a snake is attacking them, their arms really should be up, the sword should be up, and they should be prepared for battle because that's what they are in the book when this scene happens. And this is one of the examples where a scene in the book actually would make a decent cover, is the sea serpent attacking. And then this final one, the golden triangle, I went through and did basically the same thing. I made sure that the title stayed more or less on that, that point in the triangle, and then the same thing down here with the couple being more or less in that intersecting point of the golden triangle. And again, here they're a little bit more active, and I like that more. I drew this after I drew the other one, realized, oh, they should probably be actually moving in this. I should bring some movement into it. I'll probably go back and redraw that other one so that they have movement before I decide whether or not it's going to be the cover I use. So there you have it. That is the next step. This is what we do after we do market research. We start sketching out ideas. And for some designers, they do that on the computer. For me personally, as an illustrator, it's just easier to do it on paper and pencil. And like I showed you, you don't have to do it anything fancy. You don't have to be able to draw figures. You can totally do this with stick figures. And you don't have to be able to draw pretty fonts. You can do it just in your regular handwriting. The point here is determining the best compositional layout and the elements that you're choosing to include in your layout. That's all we're doing in this step, is making sure that you have what you need in order to create the cover you want. And this is a lot less time consuming than sitting there on a computer with software and trying to make the software do what you want. And getting mixed up with colors and everything else, filters, effects, all those things that actually are going to come at the very, very end of this whole thing. Because the next video I'm going to put out, we're going to do this in grayscale so that we know what this will look like on like a Kindle. Because there are Kindles that will do black and white, and there are Kindles that will do color. What is your book cover going to look like in black and white on that person's Kindle? Especially if they're going through and they're searching the Kindle store on that Kindle reader. That's going to make a difference. It also lets you understand depth, because if you can create something in black and white and grayscale, that will help you understand the values of depth in the color that you need to create. And it will really just make all of the colors feel more natural and like they match better when you do go through and pick your color scheme. So don't jump into color first thing. Be thinking about it. Be thinking about the colors and the tones. Same with fonts. These aren't the fonts I've chosen. This is just me sketching fonts more or less from memory, and adding things to it that I like. But they're tonally what I know I need. And so those are the things you're going to be thinking about. But when it comes to sketching out your idea, you start with composition and you start with the things that are most important to be on the cover. Your title and whatever elements are going to tell the reader what to expect. And remember, that doesn't necessarily have to be a scene from your book. It just needs to be something that communicates effectively what your reader can expect from your book. I think the best piece of cover design advice I've seen so far in all of the research I've done on this has been that you are selling an experience, not a story. I want my reader to understand the experience they're going to get in reading my book. I'm not trying to tell them the story through the cover. Now, because my title is Love, Ships, and Sea Serpents, it makes it really easy to pick those three things and have them all be on the cover. But that doesn't mean they have to be. And it also can mean that I can use those three things ineffectively, because an experience is sold through tone. So, one thing before we go, and I've not done this before in these videos, but I'm going to do it today. I have homework for you. There is a booktuber and bookstagrammer out there. Her name is BooksandLala. That's her channel name, and I'm pretty sure that's also her Instagram handle. And she has videos on her booktube that I want you to go watch. I'm going to link all of them down in the description below. And I want you to watch these videos because she is not a cover designer. She's not a designer, but she is incredibly good at spotting trends. She's very, very good at seeing what a cover designer is doing and what they're communicating. And she's very good at recreating it. So what I want you to do is I want you to watch the videos. They're all videos of her predicting what a cover will look like and creating what she thinks the cover will look like. But she talks about how she sees color trends. She talks about font trends. She talks about the things she's seeing as a reader and what she's noticing. And they're the same things that as designers we look for. And they're the same things that as designers we make sure that we are utilizing and following. So I want you to watch her videos. If you're sensitive to explicit language, then stop watching all of these videos when she finishes the designs. When she does her reactions to what the covers ultimately looked like compared to the cover she designed, she does use some explicit language in her reaction. If that doesn't bother you, watch to the end, and it's fun to see her reaction to how close she was or how far away she was. But all that said, I want you to watch these videos because she teaches so well without actually sitting down and talking you through her process. She just teaches you what you want to be looking at. What are the things you should be noticing in the covers that you are bringing in to help you design your own book cover? I'm really curious to know which of the covers that I showed you for the mock-ups is your favorite. Let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps other authors find it. And make sure you subscribe if you want to see the next iteration of what this cover is going to be. I post videos on Wednesdays about cover design, discovery writing, and self-publishing on a shoestring budget. I hope to see you again soon.